Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who is out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and today I'm interviewing a guy named Jerry Whiting. Jerry runs a company called LeBlanc CNE, and it is a company that deals with cannabis, marijuana, and making various types of tinctures, medical use, recreational use. He'll explain everything that he does. He's a guy I've known for a really long time, and you'll hear about that in the interview. And what I found really interesting was the history of marijuana, which he's going to explain how that sort of transpired here in America from the 60s up until now, and how that has affected the types of genetics in the plants. And then we get into some things he does for the canna community. I guess that's a whole world. I don't know much about it, but he's going to tell us all about it. And then we get into a little politics, big pharma. It's a wide-ranging thing. Now, the big issue, of course, is he was in Seattle, and we were on Skype, and it was not a great day for a Skype connection. So some of the volume varies between us, and the content is really worth listening to, and I think you'll get used to the difference in the sound between myself and him, who is talking into a computer microphone in a car. But I loved the content. It was, kind of a wild ride, as you might imagine. So here he is. This is Jerry Whiting. Okay, talking to Jerry Whiting. He's in his car in Seattle, and we're doing this over Skype. So he's frozen in the picture, but I think he can hear me, right? Oh, no, now you're moving.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Hi, Bob. How you doing, buddy?
Hi, I'm good, man. Just for full disclosure, and again, a good story, Jerry and I have known each other since 1970 when we were 16 years old. We met in high school.
Yes, we did.
And Jerry, unlike me, is now an old man.
Oh. We used to be the same age, but now I'm ancient. Yes, that's true.
Yeah, I stayed 16, but you aged. I don't know what the hell happened to you. Anyway.
Life happened.
Yeah, you look actually, he looks fantastic. He's a smiling guy in a car right now. And Jerry has, let's put it, back in 1970, I was smoking a lot of pot because I was in high school, and it was, hold on, I'm going to turn off my ceiling fan. I don't want that noise to come in. Hold on.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm all over the place today. How about that? So
Quite all right.
Yeah, it's all good. And so we used to, party together in high school and smoke a lot of pot. And somewhere around, for me, over 30 years ago, I actually stopped smoking pot completely because it turned on me. And now this is something that happened to me. It went from really fun and creative and energetic to paranoid and apathetic. So I stopped. Jerry.
And what year was this?
This was 1985. 1985.
Okay, so cannabis changed about that time, too. We can talk about that later.
Okay, so Jerry now has a company called LeBlanc CNE, and as everybody knows out there, the whole cannabis world has changed. It's legal, relatively so, in many cities. And he has made, he was in the software business, right? Writing code, what kind of stuff?
For like 30 years.
Yeah, for like 30 years. And then this legalization thing happened, and he took his passion for cannabis and has turned it into a business. Now, since I don't know anything anymore, tell me the difference between some of these words I don't No, I don't
Okay.
understand what cannabis, THC, all the terminology is very confusing to me. To me, it's all weed,
Okay.
and I know there's medical stuff, and that's what I want to talk about.
The reason I use the word cannabis, 70 years ago when Harry Anslinger demonized our favorite plant and made it illegal at a federal level, he used the word marijuana, which was a term used by Hispanics, by Mexican Americans. So the prohibition and the war on drugs has always been racist in nature. We fast forward to 2017, and some of us prefer to use the word cannabis because it talks about the drug cultivars as well as hemp and everything in between. It's all cannabis sativa L, but also to reclaim the word and to say, look, it's a plant. It's not a derogatory racist term that we use to talk about it. It's a botanical thing, and cannabis just sounds better than marijuana.
I agree. It sounds
DC. So I live in Seattle, which, as some of you may know, is relatively left of center. Here in Cascadia, everything's PC, crunchy, green, eco, and so some of us make a concerted effort to rebrand the plant as cannabis as opposed to marijuana.
okay. I understand that. So let's talk about your professional life. What is LeBlanc CNE? What does your company do?
Okay, so I founded it with my son, and we have three primary areas of interest. I am known for genetics, for seeds, pollen, breeding efforts, especially focusing on not only CBD-rich medical strains, but believe it or not, Bob, the old school stuff that we did smoke in the 70s from film canister seeds that have survived all these years. The second thing besides genetics is I do product dev and formulations. Uh, I was that nerdy kid in the basement with the chemistry set as a youth that, of course, turned his hobby into a passion. And so I make things like topicals you put on your skin, tinctures, infused products that you eat, et cetera, et cetera. And lastly, I teach. I share what I know. So I have a podcast, LeBlanc CNE, or rather, LeBlanc CNE, find it on iTunes or SoundCloud. I teach, I lecture, I consult, et cetera, et cetera. So genetics, product dev and formulations, education.
Um, so let's talk about these different products.
A lot of people, for health reasons, don't want to smoke a joint, or they associate a joint with tie-dye hippies who were slackers and don't do shit, which we all know is not the case. They may eat it, and as opposed to LSB tokeless brownies, which were gritty because you put the pot in the blender, people make canna butter. They infuse butter with marijuana. They make coconut oil that's infused. There are people who write whole cookbooks
Yeah, I've seen
about how to cook really tasty food that gets you really buzzed. On the other hand, there are kids, who wear the baseball caps backwards and want to dab. They take the concentrated oil that's been extracted, put it in exotic glassware, put a creme brulee torch to it, inhale deeply, and take in more THC than you and I ever did over a long weekend. But then there are a whole number of products, either topical things that you put on your body, like salves and lotions. There's a whole growing niche for cannabis-based sex lubricants. You walk into these stores, and they aren't dingy places tucked away somewhere. Some of them are highly stylized, knowledgeable staff, and glass cases with product after product after product. So yeah, we legalized medical marijuana in Washington State in 1998, and then cannabis, 4 years ago, recreationally, and adults over 21 can walk in the store, flash their picture ID, and buy an ounce at a time.
So give me an example of a tincture that somebody might come in and buy that isn't for the purpose of getting high, that's for some medical reason. That's what I'd really love to hear about.
It'll take me a while to weave the tale, but it will highlight and explain a lot of what we see today.
Okay.
So when you and I were listening to the Dead and hitting up that Mexican brick read, there were people with backpacks. You know what I'm talking about, bro. Yeah. There were people with backpacks doing the hippie trail through either Northern Africa, Morocco especially was popular, or India and Nepal and the Himalayas. One of the reasons they went was for the sense of adventure. The other was a chance to get stoned out of their minds. Some of these people on the hippie highway brought back seeds. They only brought the seeds home for one purpose, to continue getting high. But a lot of these ancient land races, these vintage heirloom strains, had more than just THC, the molecule that gets you stoned. They had CBD, cannabidiol, which is CBD's cousin, which is of great interest now for medical marijuana patients for seizure and inflammation, autoimmune disorders, irritable bowel and Crohn's, et cetera, et cetera. So we come back to our hippie backpackers. They get back to the States. They got a handful of seeds they brought through customs because no one was looking for it back then. They start growing these. So you plant 10 seeds. 5 of them come up girls, but 2 or 3 of those girls don't get you stoned. They have a lot of CBD. The other 2 or 3 get you really whacked out. What do? You throw out the ones with CBD and you continue to grow the ones with high THC. Over time, the domestic U.S. cannabis gene pool drifted away from the 1-to-1 balance THC CBD, and Americans developed these strains that are high THC that over time bore little resemblance to the seeds they brought home years ago. So when people say, yeah, the pot today is so much stronger, well, I have 2 things to say. Raw THC, yes. For example, that Mexican brickweed we were smoking back then, might have had 3 to 5% THC, and you had to smoke 3 or 4 joints to get the elevation one was looking for. Nowadays, people are growing cannabis that's 22, 25% THC. Yes, a quarter of what goes into your lungs is THC that gets you high. The problem, or the issue, I should say, is Americans who brought seeds inadvertently hybridized away from the genetic land races. In addition to dropping CBD, which makes you feel well, not necessarily high, we also lost some of the terpenes, the aromatics, the things that you smell. Those molecules, while in smaller amounts, are highly bioactive. So if the cannabinoids get you stoned or well, the terpenes, the aromatic volatile things, temper and color that experience. So a B flat sounds, it's the same frequency on a clarinet, a piano, and a bass guitar, but the physics of the instrument color that. So that's like the cannabinoids and the terpenes. So what do we have now? We have all these strains that never existed in the Middle East or Southeast Asia or India, where cannabis came from, that are uniquely American, and they are designed to get you really stoned. You go back 4 or 5 years, and people rediscovered CBD. So you may have watched the Sanjay Gupta show with Charlotte's Web, a young girl in Colorado who found relief from her seizure disorders consuming cannabis high in CBD. So that's sort of where we are in terms of why what you and I experienced bears little resemblance to what's available today. Professionally, LeBlanc deals with CBD-rich strains for patients seeking relief from a number of disorders using whole plant medicine. By whole plant, I mean you don't want just the THC or just the CBD. You want a whole bunch of chemicals. CBD and THC are cannabinoids, the most popular ones. There are 75 to 100 in cannabis. Terpenes are 150 to 200. So you really don't want any one thing. You want the whole plant.
Okay. Give me an example.
Yes.
Like when you say you put it on, I'm going to go back to this thing topically. Is it for a rash? Is it for something else internally that you can apply topical?
Say you have arthritis.
Yes.
Or an old injury from a car accident. You do not want to take opioids, which is understandable, but you're looking for relief from cannabis. So for a person like that, I would suggest something topical that you would apply to the area that hurts. So it might be cannabis infused in grapeseed oil, which I use, or coconut oil. There are people that use hemp oil as a base and build their products on top of that. But you'll have THC, preferably a little CBD in there as well. And many people add essential oils and do a multi-plant formulation. So how do you use it? My rule of thumb is a patient should use as little as necessary to address the symptoms at hand. You don't want to overdo it, but start out 2 or 3 times a day. The process is called self-titration. Do I need more? Do I need less? Do I need to do it more frequently? If it hurts when I wake up, maybe I should put it on before I go to bed. Have it next to the bed, so I put it on first thing in the morning. But yeah, I mean, and oftentimes using 2 or more products has sort of a shotgun multi-phase approach. But here's the deal. No one has ever died from a cannabis overdose. The theoretical amount of cannabis you'd have to ingest to get really, really, really sick, I don't mean too stoned to be comfortable, is astronomical. So there's no sense worrying about, am I going to OD? Is it going to be too much? Am I going to freak out? With the topical, while it goes through your skin, you don't get stoned. I'm sorry. If you want to have a patch like the Nicoderm to get high at work, that ain't going to work. Yeah, topicals are wonderful. And believe it or not, in sharp contrast to what we would have thought in high school, the largest growth segment in the cannabis market where it's legal, 50 and above, what I call the AARP boomer segment. These are people who may or may not have used may or may not have used cannabis in their youth, and they're empty nesters and now they want to go back and have some fun, or they never thought about it until they realized how many pill bottles are in their house and how little relief they're getting.
Yeah, of course.
And it works.
Yeah. And, I mean, the idea of being able to, take something that isn't addicting, it doesn't get you high, but gives you relief that grows in the ground is pretty appealing.
Because as we age, I know, Bob, this doesn't include you, those of us have gotten older, you get aches and pains. Shit, man, it comes with the territory. It's a good problem to have. But there is increasing attention, especially in our home state of Ohio, about the pandemic created by over-medication with opioids and other heavy medications for one reason. They make money.
Lots of money.
It's not because Big Pharma doesn't want cures. They want customers.
Where do you sell your stuff? Is it just by, is it through stores, or is it somebody contacts you on a website? How does that work?
So LeBlanc CNE was very active in the medical marijuana ecosystem in Washington State for years. That was folded into the legal recreational 21 and over stores last year. I have recently began producing medical products in the 502 recreational ecosystem with a company called Emerald Peaks. We hope to have some of the products in the market within a week or so. And there's another company who I can't name that I would love to do. We're talking about doing products together, and they grow a number of CBD-rich strains. And this company is owned by a naturopath, and they definitely have a medical focus. So you can be a canna tourist, fly to lovely Seattle, go into a rec store, and buy products from LeBlanc real soon now. And again, because I'm a boomer, I love to get high, and therefore I will sell artisan, high-end gourmet rec products. But the real focus of LeBlanc is serving patients with medicine that gets them well.
So give me some of the medical conditions that it helps with, because I am really curious about where people can go that they're used to going to a doctor, getting a ton of pills, then taking pills to counteract the effects of the first pill. And, who wants to do that? Nobody. Nobody wants to do that. So,
well, my mom is in Cleveland and Monroe Park, and I saw when the nurse turned the computer screen around and showed me the list of medications she was on, it was like, really?
Oh.
She really needs 12 freaking pills a day. Yeah. Are you kidding me? Anyway, so let's talk about cannabis in a couple of brackets.
Okay.
So if you're looking at a strain of cannabis high in THC, not only will it get you stoned, I do a lot of pro bono work, and I love working with veterans. PTSD is a large issue. There are like 24 suicides a day from vets. Not necessarily young vets recently back from the Middle East. The largest group of vets who are killing themselves are Vietnam era vets. They're our peers and a few years older.
I heard a statistic at the VA. I have a friend that I take to appointments at the VA. He's 78, but I was talking to a couple. They were both Vietnam vets, and it's something like 70 to 80% of returned Vietnam vets are dead. The returned ones.
So the group that I volunteer with is called 22 Too Many. 22 suicides a day, which to us is unacceptable. And the founder of that group was on Facebook the other day saying he's now hearing 26 a day. Same mechanism that causes you short-term memory while you're stoned acts to cycle of that memory or memories that is trapping your head. So if you saw 3 of your buddies step on a landmine and blow up before your eyes, you're playing that over in your head 20, 30, 40 years later. Well, you can break that loop by getting stoned. I mean, quite honestly. THC, when I first started doing this, I thought, oh yeah, it reduces eye pressure in glaucoma patients. Yes, that too. I also heard, well, it's good for the nausea and vomiting when you're taking chemotherapy. The real story is THC causes cancer cells to self-destruct. People use cannabis as part of their cancer therapy. They don't necessarily give up chemo and radiation, but hand in hand, they work. It works incredibly well.
Let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
So you said that THC, somehow it would be getting rid of these unpleasant memories that are in a loop in someone's mind.
Yes.
My experience back in the day was whatever thought I was thinking, it would exacerbate it. So if I was getting paranoid, I would get really paranoid.
Cannabis today is a little different because the hippies grew different strains than what has been growing for thousands of years. And the cannabinoids changed, the terpenes changed. Anyway, some of the stuff we were smoking back then, these sativas, the Thai stick, the Maui Wowie, the Jamaican stuff, those sativas can get a little racy and a little anxious and a little freaky. There's some terpenes that you can use to reverse that. Grind some fresh black pepper. Smell it. Lemonade. You get beta-carotene from the black pepper and the limonene from the lemon, and you can turn that anxiety off in 2 to 3 minutes. But the strains we have today have a different terpene balance. It's also good for a number of autoimmune disorders, irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's, fibromyalgia, a lot of those, I don't want to say loose non-symptoms, but anxiety, unease. We have what's called the endocannabinoid system, the CB1 and CB2 receptors in our body. Not that they do things directly, but they have influence on a number of other glands and chemical processes. When you introduce cannabis into your system, you tweak your endocannabinoid system, and I like to tell people, yeah, you'll get high, but more importantly, you'll get well. The 3 things that drive elders to try medical marijuana, in no particular order, arthritis and joint pain, topicals, THC, and CBD, no sweat. Number 2, sleeplessness, insomnia. There's some strains that'll put you out like a light, but, it doesn't take much to get an 85-year-old to sleep through the night. And the third thing is, believe it or not, loss of appetite and weight loss. All these old skinny old people walk around as a bag of bones. Their pants hang off them like a marionette puppet. There's no butt to hang, just a tight belt. You know what I'm talking about, Bobby?
I got the image very clear.
So older people who are not motivated to eat, they don't have any appetite. They lose weight. Dude, one word, munchies. Give the kids, our friend Ray Caruso was home visiting his mom last weekend for her 99th birthday.
Wow.
Mom had some health issues. There was a photo of mom with the vaporizer. Ray tried it. He said, yeah, it really does work. He lives in California. He knows what time it is. But no, here's a woman who had some health issues. She decided to give up the pills, the big pharma stuff, and to try medical marijuana. This is, I'm sure, a measured dose in this like e-cigarette-like device. I'm sure if I looked at the label, What is a dose for her would be inconsequential for me, but she got relief. That's all that matters, you know?
Is there any sort of definitive medical book that, like, for, let's say,
Yes, there is.
yeah,
So here's two resources I strongly encourage your listeners to follow up on.
yeah.
I work closely with Project CBD down in California. The founder, Martin A. Lee, has written a book, Smoke Signals, A Social History of Marijuana in America. Um, if you're, first of all, buy it. If you agree that it's a great book, give your copy to your public library and buy another one. Smoke Signals, Martin A. Lee. Also, projectcbd.org. It is not hearsay, it is science straight up. Lots of references and links to research um, um, beyond practical advice. There's a lot of stuff on the interweb. We all know most of it's BS. When you start at Project CBD and follow links from there, you have my word, you're going to land on places you can trust and take at face value. Once you get your footing about what the landscape is, you know, I know people think that CBD is legal in all 50 states and you can go buy it online and on eBay. Most of that stuff is poison. Here's a rule at LeBlanc CNE. When I make medicine for people, I only use ingredients I would serve my own mother at the Thanksgiving dinner table. That means there's no isopropyl alcohol, no butane, no propane, none of that crap in anything I make. And most of the cannabis is outdoor, organically grown, hippie trippy. Not that I grow myself. Oh wait, I do. And you know, healthy food. You know,
Yeah.
it should be at Whole Foods. If you're older or younger, if you're new to cannabis or returning, or if you've been smoking black market and you go into a legal store, here's my advice. Shop around. You know, I tell people to find a bartender they can talk with openly and honestly, who can match your request for an experience or an effect with the product they have for sale. If it works, thank them profusely, tip them handsomely, be a loyal customer. If it doesn't work, walk out the door, find some place that does work for you. Same you would do with a wine store or a fishmonger or anyone else. It isn't just the commodity and the commerce, it's the relationship. And especially with cannabis, if you are in a learning mode. Plus, it's fun, man. I do it. I go in and tell people what I want, and I go home with things I never would have picked out myself.
So there's varying degrees of ability and talent in those places where you would want to get some help.
Oh yeah. And it, it's a changing market. It was really funny. If you and I go, say Bob and Jerry are going to go on a picnic, and Jerry, you're in California. Let's stop and get some wine. I know this store. You know, you're going to expect to find one of two or three things that you like on the shelf at any given time. With cannabis, it's more like produce or the catch of the day. And while there's some things that are sort of bread and butter, you can walk in and find a quarter of the offerings new since you were there 2 weeks ago. So you really need the help of a bud tender to sift through it all and to find the gem that you wouldn't have chosen yourself.
Okay. See, I always wonder about, when they have these legal growing farms now. A lot of them were illegal, and now they've become legal. Do those people use chemicals to make more
like
product?
Else, there are people who grow with things out of jars that are advertised on, in High Times that are just as funky as what Nabisco and General Mills uses when they grow grain for cereal. On the other hand, especially here in Washington, there's a huge focus on outdoor grown, not indoor. And while you can't say USDA organic because that's a federal thing, there are programs like Clean Green that are certified up to standards about not using pesticides and fertilizers that are harmful, using beneficial insects, et cetera, et cetera. And hell, there's even one store in Seattle Ruckus that only sells Clean Green. So you walk in and everything is crunchy, granola, eco, and sustainable. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, because it seems to me if people are smoking something that has chemicals in it, that would be even in some ways worse than eating them. I don't know why. It just seems like fumes of chemicals in your bloodstream seems really freaky to me.
Plus, you also, my rule is anything you're measuring in parts per million, I don't want in my body.
So to say, oh, I only used a little, yeah, a little's too much.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can. The nice thing, I do travel, especially to Oregon, to other places that are legal. I will say that the Washington market is blessed with wonderful genetics. And this is an ag state, but cannabis is second to apples and weed out here. I mean, we grow a whole lot of reefer.
Yeah.
California is off the hook. Cannabis in California. Now, remember, California passed at the ballot. They go legal January 1st. It has been de facto legal for years. California's cannabis crop is bigger than the next 5 ag crops combined. So there's a lot of lettuce and almonds and everything else coming out of California. There is way more reefer, dude. I mean, like magnitudes. And it's quite honestly, it's a thrill to go. I don't indoor is one thing. Going through a field of pot is just satisfying, whether in someone's backyard or a plantation. It's just wonderful. Way happier than soybeans.
And now there's also hemp products that are not.
So hemp is an interesting one. So one reason I use the word cannabis is that cannabis sativa L, Bob Clark, this great author, talks about the 5 archetypical types. Some of them are hemp that are less than 0.3% THC by U.S. standards. But these cultivars, these strains, are noted for a lack of THC, but often high oil content. They were used as food by our ancient ancestors, as well as food, fuel, fiber. So hemp is known for long, strong fibers. People made clothing and paper and a whole rope, out of hemp. Hemp has been illegal since marijuana, but then, of course, the government encouraged farmers in the Midwest to grow hemp during the Second World War after the Japanese took over the Philippines and cut off our supply of rope making material. It was called Hemp for Victory. And in the Midwest, farmers were encouraged by the government to grow hemp.
Yeah, I used to see it growing on the side of the road, and mostly in Indiana.
It was still there.
Everywhere.
It is still there. So, so hemp is making a comeback. The Farm Bill a couple of years ago returned control to the states. Some states like Kentucky that had a presence in hemp historically have jumped in. Other states like Washington have dragged their feet. I'm interested in the what I call medical hemp. Yes, it's less than 0.3% THC, but some strains of hemp have significant amounts of CBD as well as terpenes. So LeBlanc CNE is talking with growers and brokers in Oregon about using some of this year's harvest to make medical products that are not marijuana. They are hemp, which means they're outside the control of the feds, and I can ship it anywhere in the world, just like hemp milk or Dr. Bronner's soap or hemp granola. Hemp is a huge crop. I mean, it's a huge potential. Replacing the trees used to make paper is, you can imagine who is lobbying against that.
Yeah, the logging industry, I'm imagining.
Oh, 3 things. Paper towels, napkins, toilet paper. If we cut down fewer trees, because those are being made with hemp, major, I mean, that's like a huge environmental impact, because hemp you can grow in a season, whereas trees take decades.
Well, yeah, I was wondering how fast you can replenish those kinds of fields if you're making toilet paper out of hemp. You don't need to cut down a bunch of trees. How long would it take to reseed and redo a field?
You can plant a crop of hemp every year, and you can grow it shoulder to shoulder, 4 inches apart. You don't have to. So marijuana is grown like a Christmas tree farm because it's so valuable. You want the big flowers. Hemp, you can get on a tractor and do acres at a time. It's not about individual plants. It's about cutting it all down and processing it. Now, the problem is when they outlawed hemp, no one was in the hemp business. There are now no machines in the U.S. to press oil from the seeds or to separate the fiber and make products with that, and then use the other stuff to make hempcrete, a building material. That whole industry disappeared 70 years ago, so there's no infrastructure. But the person who writes the check to build that stuff is going to have a whole new industry at their feet.
It sounds like it. It sounds like it would be huge.
Massive.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. And then, you said hempcrete, which is basically bricks for building. Is that right?
Yes. more like Adobe in that the walls breathe. It's fireproof, low cost, low maintenance. My dear friend Joy Beckerman here in Seattle teaches workshops on using hempcrete. A lot of potential, but the plant needs to be liberated. There's so many restrictions now, both legal and cultural, that the plant's potential can't be unlocked.
Well, it seems like it's going to be heading in that direction. I mean, it's like started already for a number of years. I would like to think the more knowledge and the more acceptance, the more potential to use these products to help us.
If the boomers really are the bulge in the snake demographically, then as this cannabis-friendly generation retires, has time on their hands, that the focus of AARP shifts slightly. But we're seeing, was it 8 or 9 states with legalized recreational use, 29 states with medical marijuana. I don't care what Session 45, the orange one, thinks they're going to do. Yeah, you send in feds to knock down the industry in the West Coast, you're going to be met with stiff resistance, man. Stiff resistance. No one here has any intention of turning over, rolling over and playing dead because the feds don't like it. So yeah, I think that we were right, we won, and there are certain holdouts in the Beltway, in the conservative right. But I got news for you: when those old people look for relief from medical marijuana, there's no loyalty oath at the door. Some of those people voted for Trump. Some of those people have never, held diversity in their hearts. But cannabis, it's a magic plant, man. It opens your mind as well as heals your body. So the cannabis community is pretty hippie trippy. It is very inclusive and loving. It's just, it ain't the pantyhose cubicle corporate lifestyle. And to the degree that the original cannabis activists and pioneers can influence the normalization as cannabis goes mainstream, we're going to see a shift. Plus, the people doing it, yeah, there's kids. We're boomers, man. I mean, we protested against the war. We went to loud outdoor rock and roll concerts. And, some of us actually believe that peace and love stuff we chanted. So it's going to be a shift in America. I tell you one thing, it's going to shift some money around. Big Pharma, the people who were resisting this are, of course, Big Pharma, law enforcement, and yes, private prisons, because the war on drugs has made money for people who run private prisons. Unfathomable that you can get 10 years or more for a joint in your pocket, especially people of color who've been targeted and are incarcerated at 6 times the rate of European Americans.
Sure, well, it's selective. It's selective.
The fact that the opponents are Big Pharma, law enforcement, and private prisons sort of tells you something about the spirit and the soul, or lack thereof, of the opposition to a plant.
Well, that's the hilarious part. Scary, too, that a plant is creating.
I know.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But I saw something, well, I guess it was yesterday I saw it. It was that Monsanto was looking to get into this business that you're talking about in some way. I know they like to control farmers' seeds all over the place and come up with and
True.
So when you say it's becoming mainstream, that's a little too mainstream.
Well, yes, it is. So there's 2 parts of that story. There are rumors that Monsanto and Burpee, the seed companies, as well as Big Pharma, have a skunk works project hidden away in an unmarked room where they're furiously working to play catch up. That may be true, but really the knowledge and the oral history and the lore is with those who've been doing it for years. And I, for one, ain't going to go work for no fortune.
Well, of course not. Of course you
I'll be
won't.
polite.
Yeah.
But the other thing is the real tug of war going on is over the genetics. I come from software, and the fact that people patent stuff, hire lawyers not to write better products, but to become patent trolls and to sue people who infringed on their patent knowingly or unknowingly. We're seeing the same thing with cannabis genetics. People are trying to patent strains and lock other people out of using them. There's also, believe it or not, Open Cannabis Project, of which I'm a proud supporter. Much like open source software or Creative Commons, the idea is this resource belongs to all of us. And it's not right for any individual, let alone corporation, to piss on the bush, claim it as their own, and not share with the other kids. So my fear is that there are a handful of strains that really, really, really have strong potential for medical applications, and someone got there and through filing a patent locks everyone else out unless they pay the toll. There are groups like Phylos Bioscience in Portland, Oregon, who are asking people to submit samples so that they can do genetic sequencing and to build up this library that defines the strains genetically. Why? Because then there is a body of public information that acts as prior art. When I go to patent a strain and someone challenges it, they can say, no, this strain was in existence August 6, 2017, as noted on the public website of Phylos Bioscience, and you've got the same thing. It existed before you did, before you claimed to have invented it, and you're denied the patent. There's an article in GQ magazine from, I believe, September 2016 that's circulating on the web now, slightly updated. It talks about companies like GW Pharmaceuticals and Phytech and others, and how there's money. There's all these corporations around the world. You know, the address resolves to a lawyer's office. And I'm not saying that the individuals are up to no good or all of them are up to no good. But yeah, people are making speculative plays on this new embryonic industry. And I question the motives and objectives of some of the players. And it's interesting because at LeBlancCNE.com, LeBlancE, CNE.com, three most popular pages: how to make canna butter, how to make infused coconut oil, and how to decarb. There's a whole bunch of other deep science. No, people want to know how to do it at home.
It's sort of interesting how this underground thing. There's a piece of it it's staying sort of not necessarily underground, but for the people kind of attitude, and then there's this corporate thing, and they're not quite mixing yet in a way that's healthy.
In many cases, the genetics being grown by non-corporations are unique things that need to be preserved, and that the quality is better when individuals take care of their own as opposed to plantation. And home growers and many black market growers and many medical growers are what I call seeders and breeders, that we have a special relationship with the plant itself. We touch our girls. We often have boys, and we're breeding new strains or be passing stuff along to each other, and really advancing the gene pool. Not just doing lazy breeding.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how it develops. Because if it's something that can help people, that's really what it's about for me. I just think it's that we've got these medical cures that maybe or not maybe can be safer than for a lot of these issues that really make people addicted to painkillers, or the treatments they're getting aren't really working and they're expensive.
That's the real sin, is that you're paying all this money and going through all this healthcare morass, and in the end of you're still sick, you're still in pain. And that was just what did you do all that stuff for? My attitude is, if you can grow cherry tomatoes on the balcony, or you can have basil in your window box, there's strains that you can grow, and you can have control over what you consume. You can select what it is that you consume, and you'll have this relationship, just like having a garden is different than going to the grocery store.
All right. That was Jerry Whiting. Kind of ended it right there because the Skype issues were getting to be too much, and we just lost our connection completely. But I think we got some great stuff. I really enjoyed the history piece of that, as well as some of the medical issues that we talked about that hopefully cannabis can, in the coming years, help a lot of people. So that's the good news on that one. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in to the Exploding Human. Been enjoying the podcast and interviewing all these different people over the last few months, and I'm going to keep going. That's what I can tell you. I don't know what's next, so come back and check it out. Thanks so much. Bye.